think my message here is simple, so hopefully I can make up a little bit of time and we can get out and get some snacks and that type of thing. But I want to talk a little bit about some of my experiences. I worked for the USGS in Lincoln, Nebraska for 7 years. Also lived down in College Station, Texas for a while. So I've been around the Great Plains, and I've seen LID implemented a lot of different places, and I kind of wanted to just kind of synthesize and share some of the things that I've seen and kind of how I've seen LID develop, along with some examples that we're doing here in Oklahoma. So we're going to start off a little bit with definitions of some of these terms: validation, optimization, implementation, talk about some examples, and talk about a little bit of where do we go from here to get to the point that we want to be. So first off, validation or validate. Merriam-Webster defines that as to support or corroborate on a sound or authoritative basis, or to recognize, establish, and illustrate the worthiness or legitimacy of. So in regards to LID, the LID research that is looking to validate LID in that region is a lot of times some of the first things that you've put into a location. But a lot of times the scope is relatively limited, and when it's coming from the university side, 319 grant funded projects or something like that, it's probably going to be looking at water quality improvements or flood improvements, something like that. But the scope is going to be relatively limited, and it can have different types of things, a little bit of education, some social things integrated into it. Most times, like I said, there's not going to be a lot of policy or standards, especially local standards that you're bringing into that, and sometimes not even national design standards from some of our different organizations. So we can have a lot of different combinations of that, but generally it's going to be focused on kind of one thing. And here's a list of some of the different things that we've been doing at OSU and around the state, a couple OU projects in here that I've seen, and I just wanted to show a couple of them. We're going to hear about some of these projects more in depth later today from some of our speakers. Up in Grove, Oklahoma, we have a series of bioretention cells that were installed about 5 years ago as part of a 319 project with Dr. Brown, these were put in different land uses. First time in Northeast, in that part of the state for sure, that these kind of things have been implemented. Most people probably walk by them every day, have no idea that this is serving a function besides just landscaping. So, except for the owners, more than likely. This one right here is a residential rain garden that is right next to Grand Lake. City of Tulsa Pervious Concrete demonstration, and this is something that I got to help them with. I'm very proud of it, and we continue to look at this. We had 6 different concrete companies, the Oklahoma Ready Mix Concrete Association, OSU, numerous other groups that I'm probably going to miss some, so I'll stop right there. But what we did is we had each of the companies donated their own mix of pervious concrete for 2 parking stalls, and we've been monitoring that quarterly to kind of see how it's been clogging over time, and that's been up there for a little over 2 years. I know the City of Tulsa brings folks out there all the time to kind of see, oh yeah, pervious concrete can work in Tulsa. And so that was really, really successful. And we continue to work with that, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do some research. I wanted to just show a little bit of our data here. It's kind of interesting to me. This is percent. See, there we are. Percent of initial infiltration. So these didn't necessarily start out at the same spot. Some of them were high infiltration rates. Some of them were relatively low. So we ranged from about 400 up to 4,000 when we started. And they didn't look that much different, and we didn't really know what was in the mix. Those were companies, and they did their own internal research and development to make that mix up, and some of them, this is the first time they'd ever done it. So we were very, very appreciative of that, but we started out, and we've been monitoring that for 2 years. This is 2 years worth of data, and you can see here, let's see, there we go. Some of these, they're staying at around 50%, even after 2 years. And this is used every day. It's at the West Maintenance Yard here in Tulsa. One of them here kind of went to 50%, and then now it's coming down here at 20% or less, and then a couple of these went down pretty fast and has continued to go down. And I haven't really done measurements for this, but basically the ones that started out lower, they're going down to basically nothing. And this actually 10% is kind of an artifact of how it's measured, because there's a lot of horizontal infiltration. So basically it's pretty much totally clogged. Where some of these that started up around 1,500 to 4,000, they're staying around 50% even after 2 years. And my kind of theory is the bigger pores, they're kind of able to wash themselves clean, and we're continuing to get some things there. This middle one is actually kind of interesting because it seems like we started on that track and maybe something got in there and started to clog it more, and then you went down pretty fast again. So we hope to, you know, utilize this data to kind of help determine in this region how often do you need to clean it, and it partially seems like it's maybe dependent a little bit on the mix. So that's some pretty cool stuff. Over in Edmond, there's at the ZeroScape Gardens, Michael Holmes and David Hillock and some other folks from the OSU Landscape Architecture Department helped them design the ZeroScape Demonstration Garden, which has bioretention and some pretty big rainwater harvesting system that's on the other end of this building up here. So that's been used as demonstration. There hasn't been any monitoring or things like that, but people see it every day. Rainwater harvesting systems are a little bit more obvious on what they're using it for, and I think they're still using it for landscape watering. So that's kind of, you know, been that purpose for that one. Trail Woods Development. Reed Kaufman, who's one of our speakers today, right here. This is down in Norman, and to me, this is one of the coolest bioretention projects in the region, where they have this U-shaped development. One half of it is all LID bioretention. The other half of it is conventional, and they're monitoring the runoff off of each half of it. And you know, they're identical replicates except for the stormwater management. They worked with Ideal Homes and Richard McCown out of Norman. That was also a 319 funded project. So that's really cool also. And so this is another one of these validation projects. Cedar Valley Nursery down in Ada, Oklahoma. As part of my extension duties at OSU, I was called down there by Oklahoma Department of Ag, Fish and Forestry. I think that's what ODAS stands for. Anyway, I was called down there because they were seeing bifenthrin in the stream. Bifenthrin is a very aquatically toxic insecticide, and but it also is hydrophobic. It wants to stick to the solids. So they were seeing it in the stream in the water column. If it's in the stream, it's really hot down in the sediment. And they have a agreement with them that they can come out and monitor, and they asked them to try to do something, so they called me out there, and I hadn't seen any research of bioretention reduction from pesticides, but knowing that pesticide and the fact that it liked to stick to particles, to me, thought, heck, if we could put this through some bioretention media, we should be able to do a good job of removing things. So I went out there, they said, well, let's walk around, and hypothetically, if you were going to put these in, show me every place you would put one in, and, you know, kind of talk about some design and stuff. So we walked around the whole place, and didn't hear back from them, and one of my colleagues at OSU was there 9 months later, and they had 8 or 9 what they called biofiltration areas installed, and that's what one of these is right here. And that was 3 years ago, and they have not seen bifenthrin in that stream one time since then. So after that, we've worked with the EPA IPM program out of Region 6 and got some more funding to try to look at some of the processes, and actually just got another project funded through the USDA IPM program. So that's some of our validation projects, and those are a first step, and those need to be done. And that's where a lot of the things that we're doing right now in Oklahoma in this region is going. But the next step after that, okay, you can see it works pretty good. So now we need to optimize. We want to make something as good or as effective as possible. But to me, what I see from an LID standpoint is that we're still relatively focused. So we put it in there, we see that we're reducing flooding, we're improving water quality pretty good, or we can make it look pretty good and it's sort of functioning. So now let's expand our scope a little bit, and let's try to get better. So maybe we're looking at the bioretention media, and best stuff we can get for phosphorus removal, something like that. So we're going from that, and so these are a lot of times from grants, but I see municipalities and some private entities getting involved with this area as well. There may be some policy standards, there may be not yet, but we're moving a little bit further along. So on all of our different objectives, we're getting a little bit farther down the line, but you'll still have different components, different priorities, those types of things. Or maybe you're writing a standard for pervious concrete specification within your community or something like that. So we're working on optimization. And some of the things I talked about already, the grove cells, that was actually kind of, in my opinion, a combo study, because Dr. Brown was actually also looking at adding fly ash to our bioretention media and doing as well as we can to get phosphorus out. And it's shown to work very, very well, and we're actually doing some monitoring right now with another 319 grant. So 319's been very good to us at OSU. I mentioned the Berry Family Nurseries. Also worked with the city of Weatherford, which is a small community, not even an MS4, but they're having some localized flooding issues. So they called me up through my extension program, said, hey, can you help me out? So we had a partnership with Ellen Stevens, who's a local civil engineer consultant, and helped them develop a stormwater development plan that included zoning, looking at future uses, where the population is going, that type of thing. Sand cisterns that are in Stillwater, this is actually kind of a cool optimization thing in my opinion. This is another one of Dr. Brown's inventions, maybe isn't the right term, although I'm sure this type of thing's been done for a long time all over the place. But basically it's kind of a combination of a bioretention cell and a rainwater harvesting system. Put a liner at the bottom of your bioretention cell so you hold the water in there, put a little well in. And we have a couple of these in Stillwater, one at Skyline Elementary and one at the Botanic Gardens. And you can see here the looping tubing at the bottom, sand, and then some sand, topsoil at the top with sand columns. So at the beginning we can encourage that infiltration, and I think we're kind of seeing as the plants get established, those roots and decaying roots add as nice macropores to continue our infiltration. The last one is Deerfield Estates. This is on the same 319 grant that we're monitoring up at Grove. We're also developing this, we're retrofitting bioretention into this neighborhood. It's down in Oklahoma City. It's actually on the other side of Tinker Air Force Base, right by Choctaw Road, and we're putting some different scales of bioretention in there. Working with the landowners, or with the homeowners. We're actually very pleasantly surprised. We sent them a letter, knocked on their door, and most of them were having problems with drainage already. And it's kind of sandy, but they were having some problems anyway. So most of them were really willing to work with us. And we have about 12,000 square feet of bioretention planned. It actually just got started being built this week. I think it's about 85,000 square feet of a drainage area. We're doing some different things. We're doing an experimental bioswale that's kind of combining cross-vein technology with bioretention in the bioswale with some extra reinforcement. I'm really excited about that and hope to have a student to do some more investigation of that type of thing. We're also installing I thought I had a picture of it in here, but it must not have got in there. We're having kind of a neighborhood bioretention cell at the bottom of it, and that person who owned that land had this open area kind of down in the floodplain, and they said, go ahead, do it. They used to have a motocross track down there that his wife made him get rid of it, but now it was really bumpy, so it was a chance to get it smoothed out. But he would like to hit his golf ball down there. And he's like, is it going to get in the way of me practicing my golf game? And a little light went off in my head, and I said, heck no, we're going to have sand and everything else down there. Let's just put a golf green. We can have some faux sand traps or whatever else they might end up being rock traps so they don't get washed out. But Reed Kaufman did a great job of helping design some of that with us. So we're excited for that, and that'll be built by the end of May, and we'll be having a workshop on that kind of thing. But so we're moving on to implementation from there. So implementation is taking all the objectives and trying to maximize these co-benefits that we're looking at. So we're trying to carry out and accomplish our goals, especially to the practical effect that will ensure our actual fulfillment of our goals across the board. So everybody's working together so that we can ensure efficient and effective widespread adoption of optimized LID systems. And so we're trying to get all of these objectives to work together and try to maximize the co-benefits or ecosystem services, or however you want to describe that, to get them to work together. So how do we get there? One of them, and this is probably the only example that I really would hold up right now in this region, is this competition that's finishing up tonight. We're bringing folks from all kinds of different facets together, looking at the economic part of it, the policy part of it, function, design, flow. All of those things are coming together, and I think you've seen at some of the other competitions across the country that these kind of things can really serve as a catalyst, especially if after it's done you continue to advertise it and build on that momentum. So that's going to be a challenge for us moving forward. So how do we implement that change? First thing is integration. And that's integration of the disciplines, whether it be physical or biological, design, our social sciences. Why do people adopt things or not adopt things? That's something that, as an engineer, I used to not think about very much. And when we're getting into LID and trying to convince people to have them maintain our stormwater management instead of having the city maintain the stormwater management, and we want that to continue to function, that's something that is definitely going to need to be addressed. That's part of the education and also our policy as well. Next is balancing and evaluating co-benefits. So the fact that you create habitat, how does a single homeowner or commercial developer, how can they value that on the bottom line? And so that takes some willingness to pay studies, some things like that. Some of our social sciences researchers can help with that, but we need to be able to integrate that and communicate that from a community standpoint and those types of things. Industry standards and design specifications. We talked about pervious concrete specifications, but really from ASCE and ASLA and everything else, integrating design standards that are on the same level as conventional design standards and that don't conflict with each other. That's a challenge. That's really a challenge, and even just communicating with one another. The landscape architects call something a rain garden, and the engineers call it a bioretention cell, and somebody else calls it a biofiltration gallery, and everything else. So, and that's not unique to green infrastructure, but that's something that is a hurdle that we really need to address. Fundamental and applied research. You guys are getting a freebie for the webinar that I'm doing next week for the Center for Watershed Protections, because this is going to be a big part of my talk. But I'm doing a talk with a guy from North Carolina who does stream restoration, and he's a practitioner. And as we were preparing for that, you know, he's talking to me as a faculty member, an academic, and saying, man, when we're doing stuff out in the field, we're so far ahead of you guys. We go out there and we see something, we got to solve it, and you guys are in these little silos and blah, blah, blah. So really the integration of the academics and the practitioners is something that I think is very, very important. And that's our academic, municipal, private partnerships. And that's where the competition has been really really useful, I think, for me and for some other folks these types of symposiums and projects moving forward. 319 is a really great vehicle for that if you're in the right area. And finally, to kind of conclude, talk a little bit as a employee of a land grant institution. We have sometimes what we call our three-legged stool of teaching, research, and extension. And I have the privilege of having a research and extension appointment, so I get to come out and work with the practitioners a lot and do workshops or different types of things. I love to do workshops when a practitioner is actually constructing something, and then you come out and have them talk about it and be that conduit for that continuing education. So it really is a great chance for connection with industries and municipalities. And for me, some of the cool things that I've got to do as a researcher were questions that somebody asked me and I didn't know the answer, and I looked it up in the literature and nobody else knew the answer either. So I can do something that's going to be useful at least for one person that they didn't, and probably a lot of other people. So for me, that's very important. I think that's a great opportunity for the land grant system across the nation. Allows that opportunity for that communication, talking about the practitioners and the researchers, and the policymakers as well. And finally, it provides practical education for those students. You hear a lot of people say that, you know, okay, you got this college degree and now you can come out and I can train you on what you're going to do. So it allows them to really get some exposure to real world things. We have a landscape architecture class in the back of the room right here that's doing some student design presentations later on today in cooperation with the City of Owasso and Tim Doyle, who's here in the middle of the room. So I think the land grant institution is really in a good place to assist with that, and we have some other land grant institutions. Even University of New Hampshire. Is James in the room right now? Yeah. And Nebraska and Kansas State. So all of these land grant institutions, I think, can play a very big role. So how are we doing on time? I don't even. We're probably a little bit late, but I appreciate the time. And if anybody has any questions, actually 10:01. Boy, we caught up. Anybody have questions for me or for Martin or Susanna? Yeah.
First question, Jason, on the Pervious Concrete Tulsa project, are they doing any maintenance to that, or is it just being tested at this point and they're not doing any type of maintenance?
No maintenance at all. We have not done any maintenance. The plan is that probably this fall we're going to maintain it, which a vacuum sweeper can get those particles out, and we'll measure and see how it improves it. But now that some of them are getting completely clogged, I'm pretty worried about if we get to the winter, water flows through pervious concrete, but if it gets in that soil, it's going to stick there. And if it freezes overnight, we might get some rattling on the top. So I'm worried about going another winter like that. So yeah, the plan is to do that this fall. And I actually have an undergrad student who's going to do an undergrad project this summer looking at some spatial variability and some more often than quarterly measurements as well, if I can convince the city to block it off for a long enough time. Yeah.
These are wonderful projects that you showed us examples of. And if you had one project that you could dig up and redo, which one would it be?
Oh, man. I didn't put those on the presentation. I think we've learned a lot from everything. I don't know if there's anything that's really not worked very well. Even you know, the Grove cells, we installed them, and the installation procedure was a little delayed, so we didn't get to monitor for 5 years, and then we got another grant and are able to monitor. But really, these things need to stabilize and that type of thing, and we're still able to go back. We had just recently took some soil cores, and I think there's going to be a poster here talking about how much phosphorus has been retained in there based upon looking at those soil cores. But I don't know if I'd have one that I would redo. Everything is a learning process, so even if you have a failure, you can learn what not to do the next time.